In this episode, I'm interviewed by Angelique van Os, a Dutch music journalist and founder of the online travel platform Pure of the Road, together with the amazing photographer Henk Bothoff. The pictures on their website are absolutely stunning, and what we all have in common is traveling the world. In this episode, we talk about several countries I have visited, like South Africa, Tuva, which is the Russian part of Mongolia, and much more. Enjoy.
Where does this wanderlust comes from?
To be honest, I don't really know. All I remember is then when I was a child, I was already staring at road maps, totally fascinated, and globes, exploring the earth. And already as a child, I had this really interest, curiosity for traveling. And at some point when I became a musician, especially a jazz musician, and started to collaborate with all these cultures, long story short, for now, that's a great combination. And I'm still curious. I'm going to Australia in a couple of months for the very first time. I've never been to Australia before, and I'm still excited to explore a new country. So it's so in my blood, in my system. To date, it's 117 countries. 117.
Yeah, it's like a sports.
Like a risk, the game. Conquer the world. No, I don't see it like that, but it's a lot. Yeah.
So in Australia, that's a big country. Yes. I saw on your agenda that you are heading for Sydney, and also another city. I don't recall that one, but what do you expect from Australia?
Yeah, Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. I'll be going there.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, what I expect from Australia is so. I have a country which is kind of second home. That's a long story, but that's South Africa, and that's also because I've got family there, and I played there for over 40 times, and it's an amazing place. And unfortunately, South Africa, of course, has a lot of safety issues.
Yeah,
and many South Africans migrate to Australia because they say it's the safe version of South Africa. Of course, it has a similar history, the colonial history from the Brits, and also like a very Western. Well, Australia, I think, is more Western than South Africa. South Africa is also very African, but of course, there's a lot of Western influence there. So you fly over all these continents, you fly all over Africa, and then all of a sudden you're in a country with so many Western influences, like especially in the Cape Town area. And Australia, you fly all over Asia, over China, you name it. And then you are again in a rather Western environment. And I think that's what it has in common. So, and also the language, of course, English and a lot of local languages. So I expect in that way things to be similar, but I also must say, that's what I also always say, I'm not surprised anymore by the fact that I'm going to be surprised.
Yeah, that's like in a way the same saying as you think because you are around for a long time, you know a lot. But every time when you come somewhere, you realize I don't know nothing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
After more than 100 countries, I know zero, really. Maybe now I have the feeling after so many countries, I start learning something. And then still I'm very modest and humble. But also but that curiosity is also so important because that creates like the right energy to meet new people. And, if I would be like a little blasé, like, oh, I've seen it all. And,
exactly.
I think it would be less exciting, but also I wouldn't attract the right people because I always attract great people everywhere. And I think it has to do with the open-mindedness and also the curiosity, and yeah. So yeah. So
That's something I also
we know nothing. We know nothing, Angelique.
well,
Yeah.
but that's
Sorry.
also something I recognize from our travels, and especially with Henk, who is doing a lot of the photography with the tribal people, with the nomad people. And he's also always very open-minded and always curious about, the traditional way of life of the people. And because he puts himself at the same level as the people he's visiting, which is logical for us,
Exactly.
but it's not always logical for everyone. But because you do so, you get a lot in return, and that's so great that you feel chemistry with these people you don't know at all, but you still have the feeling that something is happening. That makes me always very happy when that happens.
You know, the thing is also, whenever I go to travel to a country, being especially when I do those collaborations with world music crossover, I still don't know the right word, and I actually don't really like all these terms, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I'm very aware of the fact that I am a guest. You know, I'm not there to show my skills as a pianist, or I'm there to collaborate with people. And also musically, when I do these collaborations, you basically when you play with world musicians, world music, you have two kinds of musicians. Some of them are actually, most of them, to be honest, they're not too flexible because they've been playing their traditional music all their lives, and you know, when you try to challenge them to do something else, they kind of get distracted or upset or insecure. And I always sense like, okay, don't go there. But sometimes people are really open and want to be challenged. But no matter what, I'm always the guest, and I'm always the one who's obedient, respectful, and show a lot of love and respect for their culture. And that's exactly like you said, and what Henk also does. Maybe for the listener, you know, Henk Bothoff, he's a fantastic photographer. Together with you, you have this beautiful website, Pure of the Road. And I'll write it in the show notes as well at my own podcast, because we will publish this podcast on both channels, on your website and on my, So
crossover,
and that's exactly what Henk is saying. You know, it's like, be just at least put yourself equal, and even like be a little bit like obedient, like, okay, see what happens, but show tremendous respect for everyone you meet in general. And that opens a lot of doors.
Exactly. And maybe we have to take a step back, because maybe you can tell a bit how you started to tour internationally, because for many musicians it's like a dream come true to do so, but for many it never really happens. I think you started in Belgium, if I'm correct.
Yes.
And also with networking with the international embassies. Can you, in a recap, in a few minutes, how you developed your international playing, performing?
So then I have to go back even one more step, maybe, because the thing, because the thing was, look, I play jazz. I play the music I love to play. And when you're young, you're at the conservatory and you're just playing music, and then you do a painful discovery, and that's that this music you love to play is by far not music for the millions. You know, it's a big niche market. So I thought about myself, well, if I want to make a living out of playing this music, I shouldn't only see the Netherlands as the place to work, but the whole world as the place to work. Because I figured if in every country there is like a jazz audience, which is also what it is, but it's true. You know, one little oil drop of oil can in every country can create quite an oil spill worldwide.
Yeah,
You know,
for
that in
sure.
combination, that in combination with my curiosity for traveling, was an ideal combination to create this mindset. Like, okay, so I have to travel. So, and when you create a mindset at a young age, well, in any age, but when you're younger, it's easier. You start acting accordingly. So, and then I realized, because you said the Belgian saxophone player, that's true. This is Frank Waganet. He's a fantastic musician. He's also the musical director of the Brussels Jazz Orchestra for many years. It's a wonderful orchestra. Frank is a fabulous musician and still a great friend. We have a very, very strong connection. And Frank is from Belgium. I'm from the Netherlands. And so what happened was we started a quartet, and Frank started to get us gigs in Belgium, and I booked gigs in the Netherlands. So that's how we exactly. And but I'm talking about 30 years ago. It was different times.
Yeah.
And so I got a lot of exposure in Belgium. Frank got a lot of exposure in the Netherlands. And then I realized, so that's the trick sounds a little bit harsh, but that's the way to do it, or a good way to do it, is by hooking up with international musicians from other countries, start collaborating. And to date, still to today, that's what I'm doing. I search for musicians. I also invite them to Holland if I can, to the Netherlands, and that has been a great formula for me, which now led to this whole international huge network which I have, and it's great. And still, I mean, like this morning I was in touch with a fantastic drummer from Argentina to do a couple of concerts there in November, and but also in Asia. I'm often in Indonesia. I know wonderful people to play with there. So it's and in South Africa and in Brazil, and I can go on for but
you have your connections everywhere. But
yes,
I can imagine it also really helps because, if I'm correct, you speak like 7 languages, right?
Yes, next to traveling, another obsession is language. It's true.
I can only dream of that. How did you manage to make time for that? Because when you travel, you have the opportunity to stay a bit longer, perhaps in a country, or
Well, what helped me, of course, when we're from the Netherlands, so that's already a big advantage, as opposed to countries like Germany, like Italy, like France, Spain, where the television is all voice-over.
Yeah, that's true.
That makes a big. We don't realize it being Dutch, but we already from a very young age have been exposed to German, and which is our neighboring country, and to English because of television. So that already helps a big deal. And then my father, who was an opera singer, like you said in the introduction, he sang mainly Italian opera. So I picked up on some Italian. So I was lucky there to pick up something from a Latin language. So then when you start traveling to Spain or to Portugal or to Brazil, it makes it a little bit easier. But what I find challenging, because I'm my wife, who I'm with now, she's Indonesian, so I'm learning Bahasa, which is the language of Indonesia.
Okay.
And and which is an Asian language. At least we can read it because it uses our Western characters, and it's a doable language. But I'm studying that, but that's a little bit harder because you have no reference point. You see, but language has always been an obsession for me.
And a good help when you travel so much. It's much easier to make contact and Yeah, even when you're in really remote areas and you can say only
Yeah.
like a few words, you already break the ice in a way.
It does wonders, really, really.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
wherever I go, even with no matter how complicated the language is, the first thing I do when I arrive, I ask the person who picks me up at the airport or wherever I ask them,
Hmm.
him or her, I ask, how do you say thank you in your language?
Exactly. Yeah,
And
yeah,
then when you say thank you, that even to an audience before you start announcing in English,
yeah,
it's amazing how this works.
yeah,
And
yeah. It's funny.
and
Yeah,
so and again, it's all about respect. Huh? It's also
yeah.
part of
We
respect.
In a way, we had a similar experience when this fall we visited the Muila people from Angola. And
Yeah,
we also just knew a few words. And these people are living very remote in remote areas. And so we only had a few words. And when we arrived, we asked our guide for a few words. And when we arrived, we said those words. And they were like, they didn't really see any, travelers, or in very, very few. Um,
it's very seldom, so very rare.
yeah, it was very
Yeah,
rare, exactly. So when we arrived, we said those words, and they were like flabbergasted that we knew this word. Only our translation
yeah.
wasn't very well yet, but we had
No,
so much fun only because we had a small connection through those words. So, like you said, with an audience or with people of different cultures, it's always nice to, as a starting point, to make contact.
thank you for listening. If you enjoy my podcast, then please subscribe, leave a rating and a review. Please visit my website, mikedelferro.com, where you also will find links to my other podcast, Self-Management for Musicians. You will also find links to my music and my socials. And of course, please share this podcast with anyone interested. Nothing beats the word of mouth. Thank you. We're from the Netherlands and we're very Western, but you can be exotic in other places of the world,
Hmm.
where people still want to touch your skin and or
Yeah,
touch your
yeah,
hair and I go like, what? Me, this chubby pianist from Amsterdam, that people
yeah,
want
yeah.
to touch me because of my skin, and that blows my mind. That's fantastic. So
Yeah.
we are also exotic people in a way to them.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's true. I brought some makeup to the Himba people, for instance, in Angola, and because they have their own type of beauty, and so I showed them some of the makeup we use for our beauty. So first I put something on, and then I asked if they wanted to try it, and they were like, "Wow, what's this?" And despite we didn't speak any of their language, it was also a way of making connection. And I think that's very nice when you meet new people, and there's a language boundary, and you can connect. You search for with an open mind with music, or
Yeah,
with this small example that you search for a way to make a connection. And
that's
yeah, it's
yeah.
very nice.
Things which all humans have in common. Women want to look beautiful, and musicians want to connect through music. In 2005, I went to Afghanistan to do a collaboration with traditional musicians. That was actually with my band, and we had a huge language barrier because we had a translator who was an absolute sweetheart, but he had no clue about musical language. So
Hmm.
we had to really do everything through the music. So There's this guy who played the robop, which is like a traditional instrument, like a string instrument from Afghanistan,
Hmm.
and he looked at me and he played a chord, and then I repeated the chord, and and then he played a melody and I played something on top of the melody, and that's how we just started creating music by listening to each other. And I remember also the looks, we had when I looked at these eyes from someone from such a different culture, how
Hmm.
this was like it was like love, really pure love. And then the
Yeah.
other musicians joined, and it was amazing, and we just created music. And that very same evening, despite that we couldn't really, literally not a single word, we had absolutely no, we couldn't communicate through a single word. They invited us to our houses. So you imagine you go to Kabul, you arrive, you rehearse, and the same night,
Hmm.
you come to their house, and and all these women started cooking amazing food for us and
Yeah.
playing music. And that's what music does. And it creates so much unity. And what
Yeah.
I also remember at that time, because in 2005 the Taliban was gone, but then there were a lot of there was also with those wars, and I don't know. And anyway, there was this kind of ambassador, American ambassador, who also you saw a lot on CNN, and he
Hmm.
was always traveling through the whole region to try to establish peace. And
Hmm.
then he said to me, man, because he was at the concert. It led to a concert. At the end, we played a concert at a cultural center in Kabul,
Hmm.
and a beautiful place, but there was no roof anymore because that was gone
Oh,
from
really?
from the war. Yeah, it was
That
like
must be strange.
yeah, semi-open air. Yeah, yeah. And then
Okay.
he came to the concert. It was actually quite a big concert, and he came to me and said, "Wow, man, how I wish that I could unite people like you do. Maybe you don't realize
Hmm.
what you're doing, but maybe you're one of the greatest ambassadors I've ever met."
Wow,
And
that's a big
yeah,
compliment.
yeah, and it's not about I want to brag about myself and all of that. I just want to point out, and I went, well, thank you. That's what I said. I
Hmm.
said it's not me because it's the music which does it. Because thanks to
Hmm.
the music, we can unite with anyone in the world, no, regardless where we come from, what our
Yeah.
beliefs are, how we look like, etc., etc. The universal language, and it's so true. And I experience
Yeah.
this in many countries.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, well, it's like a red, do you say a red thread that comes around with many musicians? Like, for instance, Herbie Hancock had a great jazz pianist. He has also done a record. Help me with the title. What's the title again? Um,
He also did some great collaboration with, let's say, different cultures than his own.
yeah, exactly. And this record, which I don't now recall the title, but this record was also really about this subject,
Yeah,
uniting cultures, people, countries,
yeah,
languages.
yeah,
And in the end, it doesn't really matter where you're from, but yeah, the message is that actually we are all the same. We are all human beings, and unfortunately, we forget that a lot
yeah, yeah,
because of
yeah,
many different reasons. But yeah, it's something I hear also as a music journalist. I hear a lot, and it's nice that music unites people so much around the world.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think, to be honest, and I don't say this out of arrogance or whatever, but I, I don't know any other field where what works so well to unite people.
Yeah, yeah. I remember
Yeah.
the title of the record. It was the Imagine Project.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 But
Yeah.
it's just like an example, and like you said, there, it's a good way to connect.
Yeah.
And speaking for myself, I'm a big fan of Scandinavian music, and in particular Norwegian music.
Oh yeah.
I really like the combination of jazz, folk, and nature, which is quite vivid in Norway.
The
And
fjordic sound.
yeah. Actually, the Norwegians, they don't really like that marketing.
The terminology, like the fjord
Yeah,
sound. Yeah.
yeah, or like
Yeah.
Nordic sound. They don't really like it, but in a way, I think, well, it's there for a reason. And
Yeah.
and one of my friends is called Carl Seglem. I don't know if you know him, but he plays saxophone and combines also jazz with folk music. But he also plays the goat horn. And I can imagine with your traveling, you have seen many different instruments from all these different countries, which are very specific for that particular region or country. And with the goat horn, it has this really old kind of Viking prehistoric sound. It's very low. And when you play it in the outdoors, even with the fjords, it has this really big range. It's very intriguing. So I'm just wondering about your experiences with those type of instruments from different cultures and countries.
Yeah, well, to start with Norway, I know Carl Seglem's music. I also, because you introduced it to me a couple of years ago, and
I
I
did.
started,
Oh,
yes, you did, you did.
I don't recall.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. You were even speaking about maybe doing a project together. You want to get something going.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's true.
And no, it's wonderful. And I'm also a big fan of Norwegian music, like, Bugge Wesseltoft and
Yep.
Bendik Hofset. It's a whole world. You can talk
Yeah,
about it for hours, and the level of playing there is so incredible. And
it's
yeah,
really high. Yeah.
it's amazing. Yeah, yeah. It's like and a good friend of mine. She's a trumpet player. She lives in Trondheim. Her name is Hildegun Oyset. And
Okay.
I did quite some concerts with her, and she also plays the goat horn.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and she
Oh,
yeah,
that's
and she
nice.
and she sometimes with effects, and she's a fantastic musician, and
Yeah.
so I've got some experience with that amazing sound. It's something to check
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and maybe we should put the names of these musicians in the show notes so that the listener can look them up. And
Yeah.
yeah, the I love these kind of like non uncommon instruments. Like you have a lot of those in Asia. I went to Burma a couple of times, to Myanmar. The previous podcast I recorded with Deborah Carter is about our trip there, and
Yeah.
there also you find instruments which you've never seen or heard before. And yeah, I've also done projects in Indonesia with gamelan, which is
Really
sometimes
different sounds.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and sometimes also in terms of tuning a little bit challenging. But then when I do, because you cannot retune the gamelan, you cannot tune the gamelan. It's tuned the way it is, and that's it. But I
Yeah.
solved that challenge by asking for a keyboard, and then I could change the frequency of the keyboard.
Transpose it.
Yeah, transpose or
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
least tune it that it sounded kind of it was doable and
Yeah.
oh yeah, I know, and also like in Tuva. Tuva is the Mongolian part of Russia,
Yeah.
and
The throat
also
singers.
yeah, in Kizil. That's
Yeah.
oh, what an amazing place. There also everywhere you hear these. Yeah, it's yeah. I love these traditional instruments.
Can you tell if I recall correctly, because you mentioned this before? Can you tell something about the piano tuner of that trip? Because if I recall correctly, you went to Tuva to perform there, and the piano, it was a good piano, but it wasn't tuned,
Yes,
and
yes.
then they tried to search for the tuner, and then something happened,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, 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 yeah. Well, that's such a fascinating place. It's Kizil. So Kizil and Tuva, it's in Russia. So you need and it's north of Mongolia, but they have a similar culture, similar language, similar music. Based on the throat singing and all of that. It's mind blowing. And I also remember the closest airport at that time was Abakan, which is in Russia, in South Russia, and it was like a 10-hour drive. That's how
And
remote it is.
of which time are we talking about?
I've been there. I went there twice. The last time is maybe 7, 8 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, and then yeah. So I mean, that's a country. You could spend a whole podcast on a whole
Yeah.
episode. You know.
Oh, maybe we can do that next time.
Yeah, we can. Yeah. So I went to so to make the story not too long. It's true. I was surprised. They had a theater because the thing in Russia is that Stalin, no matter how terrible it was, he built concert halls all over the country.
Yeah.
And so everywhere in Russia, in the former Soviet Union, in every town with like 100,000 people or more, you find a concert hall with a piano. It's really incredible.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. And there was also one in Kizil, in that remote place.
Yeah.
And the piano was actually not so bad, but it was out of tune. And then they said, yeah, we have one tuner, and the guy hasn't tuned the piano in 8 years, but we'll call him. So they call the guy, and then okay, he'll be there tomorrow before the rehearsal. I said, fine, okay,
Yeah.
and no problem. So
Because, sorry to interrupt you, but you were the first foreign piano player or musician to perform there, right?
yeah, in 8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, in eight.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was also a country where people touched my skin and my hair, and
Yeah.
I was so exotic there.
Yeah.
It was amazing. So so the next day they're waiting for the tuner and he doesn't show up, and they call him and he doesn't answer the phone. And before I forget, he also said, "Oh, I haven't tuned the piano in years. It's my first tuning job in years."
Yeah.
And they go to his house, and this is actually a very tragic story. And then he was dead. They found him lying dead in his bed. I
Yeah.
mean, this is like really kind of insane. And I go like, the guy hasn't tuned the piano for years. Then he has a job the next day, and then they found this
horrible.
Yeah, it was horrible.
Yeah.
And but they were, of course, they were kind of like, oh my God, what happened, and how we're going to solve the problem. But they were not so devastated about the fact that the guy died. And then I said,
No?
no, and I said, look, guys, this is quite intense what happened here, right? The guy died,
Yeah.
and then the promoter said to me, yeah, well, what do you want in a country where the average life expectancy is 40 years old?
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's how.
Ooh.
Yeah. That's because the thing is in Siberia, because it's in Siberia, they deal with extreme climates. They have it's minus 40 in the winter and plus 40 in the summer, and apparently it's
saw
very
it like-
bad for the body.
We saw it like last year, right? With all the fires.
Yeah,
Which you don't have a clue or an idea that happens in that part of Siberia.
A
That
heat
they
wave
have
in
these-
Siberia. But nowadays it's literally a hot item
Yeah.
all over the world.
Yeah, unfortunately,
And apparently it's very bad for the body to be exposed to such extremes, especially when and also I mean, look, you don't go there to eat healthy or to eat vegan or vegetables. It's all meat and all of that. So the healthcare at that time was also not too good. There are a lot of countries you don't get sick, and that's certainly one of them. So but that was a crazy story. That and then. I mean, and then and always when I travel, I have these. Oh, how do you call them in English? These little rubber things which you can be put in between the strings of the piano to mute the strings.
Yeah.
I also had like 4 or 5 with me, so I solved it by muting the worst notes, and sometimes I even use chewing gum Don't tell
Oh,
anyone.
really?
Yeah, I put chewing gum in between the strings to.
Yeah, you have to improvise,
You have
right?
to. It's all about improvisation,
Yeah.
and then yeah. So yeah, but so that's
And then you managed
yeah, but that's look
in a way.
with this kind of life, going to all these uncommon places, when it comes to pianos, just forget about it. So, expect the worst,
Yeah, yeah.
and when the piano's
Be flexible.
yeah,
Yeah.
very, very,
Yeah.
and fortunately, I love to play keyboards, and I can also bring my own computer, my laptop with my own sounds. So anywhere there is a keyboard, I can hook it up. So I also always ask for a keyboard if
Yeah.
it's available. And nowadays, everywhere you can find a good digital piano. So
Yeah.
that solves a
It's
lot of
easier.
problems. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
much easier. Also
Yeah.
in terms of amplification, microphones, because also in those countries, sometimes they have decent sound systems, but they don't have the right technicians. I had this in Vietnam recently. I went to Vietnam, beautiful concert hall, good sound system, and the sound engineer, he was also so nice and he tried his best, but he was actually the technical guy of the theater, but not trained in sound engineering. So that also was really hard. And at the end,
Yeah.
I said, man, maybe just switch off those microphones and we play acoustically. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. I think it also changes you as a human being, not only by traveling, but also that you have to adapt so
Yeah.
fast and easily to your surroundings, right?
Yes.
And even since you performed with so many different people and with different backgrounds, I can imagine their musical influences. It's kind of an open door, but still, that really affects your own music and your way of thinking or playing. Can you give some examples of how you integrate this in your own music?
Yeah. My general answer is that's so true what you're saying because, uh, um, I don't consider myself as a jazz pianist. I can play it. I played it
Mm,
for years, but after being exposed to so many incredible sounds from all over the world, I kind of assimilated all those sounds and put it in. And that's not something. It's not like. All right, so last week I was in Mongolia, and now I'm going to play a Mongolian scale in a jazz solo.
mm.
It doesn't go. It doesn't work like this.
Doesn't work?
But
No.
no, but it something remains in the subconscious.
Hmm.
Something is being stored
Yeah.
somewhere on the hard disk, and then at some point it comes out,
Yeah.
and then I realize, oh, I got that melody from there, and
Right.
so yeah, I've got so many, rhythmical stuff, beautiful rhythms from all
Yeah.
over the world, melodies uh, from totally unexpected countries where they have beautiful melodies. Yeah, so that really it changed my playing a lot.
Hmm. And I
Yeah,
can imagine also maybe even like atmospheres, that it
yeah,
puts you in a different type of atmosphere, and then you feel like, okay, now I'm remembering, I'm getting back to that moment in that particular place or country,
yes,
or that I
yeah,
sometimes have that when I remember uh, to something. It's not really uh, in a clear context or something, but it's more like a vibe or an atmosphere that you're
yeah.
coming back to.
There is this beautiful African song, South African song. It's called Nchilo Nchilo. It means like hummingbird. This
Hmm.
is a beautiful melody, and sometimes I played piano solo. I also recorded it, and then uh, if I play that, it's like I'm in Durban,
Hmm.
in South Africa,
Yeah.
where I know so many great musicians, and it's true. It brings, yeah, it takes you right back to that energy, to that place.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Did you ever have you ever done like a concert with friends from all around the globe and that you invited here in the Netherlands, like a big um,
Angelique, this has been my dream for many years, but
yeah.
but I still have to find the funding for this. This is
Hmm.
something. you need funding for, because if you want to invite all these people and not only funding a team, this is something I could never organize by myself, which I also sometimes regret, because I hear beautiful musicians all over the world. I meet them, and then I think of myself, oh, they should be heard in the Netherlands or in Europe or in another part of the world at least. And then, in my enthusiasm, I said, well, you should come to the Netherlands. And they go, oh, we would love to. So I stopped doing that actually, because it's out of spontaneity, in the spur of the moment, you just play it. Everybody loves each other, and you start talking like, oh, we should do more. You should come to my country and blah, blah. But I stopped doing that because in practically it's very hard to do this. And I don't want to disappoint people, promise people the world where I cannot put it into practice. But if this dream once comes true, then I will definitely invite a lot of amazing people I've met all over the planet.
Yeah. Oh, good idea. Looking forward to that. Maybe it comes sooner than you think.
Yeah, it's
you never know, right?
I'm glad you brought this up, because it hasn't been on my radar screen for a while. But that's the same, like I said in the beginning of this interview. You have to kind of create a mindset, and then at some point the mindset becomes reality. It is true. I don't want to become too spiritual and the secret and all of that, but it is true. If you have this thing in mind, and then you start acting accordingly to achieve this goal. Yeah. And it's truly true. It works.
Yeah. Well, maybe next year or so, or
who knows? Yeah.
And which country or countries are still on your wish list?
Well, I'm going to Australia, so I'm excited about that. A country close by in Europe I've never been to, it's also very high on my wish list, is Romania in the Balkan.
Oh, really?
Yeah, okay. I've never been there. And funny enough, we have, since a couple of weeks, we have new neighbors from Romania, and they're wonderful people. And they played a lot of folk music for me, because they're into folk music. And I've already listened to a lot of Romanian music, but I've been to the surrounding countries, like Bulgaria and Hungary and all of that. But Romania has a particular vibe, and I would like to go there. And another part of the world, talking about music and doing musical collaborations, a country I've never been to is Ethiopia. I would love to go there as well.
Why don't you join us? We are going to Ethiopia on a press trip, and we have one spot left in November, December.
All right, count me in.
Yeah, that would be fun. It's like, this is the country that is really special to Hank, because he has been there for 20 years. And we are going to visit several tribe people, but we are also going to do some nature expeditions and to see one of the hottest places on Earth. So it will be a challenging trip. But if you want to know more in terms of music and culture, I think Hank can also help you out with that. Yeah. So that's maybe interesting.
He's not only a great photographer, but also very knowledgeable about music. Huh? I know, like you. Yeah.
Well, actually, he maybe he doesn't like it when I say it, but he studies really hard. He has picked up the piano since 2 years ago. Wow. Again, and he's practicing 3 hours a day now. So he's trying to play a lot of classical music, but also, for instance, a concert of Keith Jarrett. So he's working very hard.
He's serious about it.
Yeah. It gives him a bit of peace and quietness. So that's nice.
Yeah. Again, for the listeners, check this website, Pure of the Road, and you'll see really mind-blowing pictures by Hank, and it's a beautiful website about traveling. It's a whole other level of travel websites I've seen. It's really
thank you.
No,
very nice.
Well, it deserves this recognition and this exposure.
No, thank you so much, and the same to you, of course. We are very happy that we can start this collaboration, and hopefully there will come out more this or
Yeah.
next year. So I'm looking forward to that, Mark.
Same here, same here. And
Okay.
thank you so much. And yeah, we'll to be continued. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy my podcast, then please subscribe, leave a rating and a review. Please visit my website, mikedelferro.com, where you also will find links to my other podcast, Self-Management for Musicians. You will also find links to my music and my socials. And of course, please share this podcast with anyone interested. Nothing beats the word of mouth. Thank you.